Roll for Crit is made possible thanks to the support of viewers like you and our patrons on our Patreon page.
You can become a patron for just $1 a month at patreon.com/rollforcrit. Thanks for tuning in to Roll for Crit. My name is Jonathan, and today I'll be reviewing the Rise of Red Skull campaign expansion for the Marvel Champions LCG from Fantasy Flight. This is the first boxed expansion for Marvel Champions, now that they've put out several of the smaller packs that will include just one hero or one villain. This baby has got a lot of content in it. It has 2 heroes, Spider-Woman and Hawkeye, and 5 villains. There's Crossbones, Absorbing Man, Taskmaster, Zola, and Red Skull himself. I'm impressed with myself that I was able to name them all in one go. I didn't need to look it up or anything. And in the order you fight them against them in the campaign as well. That's the other big thing with this one. It's got a campaign mode in it, whereas before, all the Marvel Champions scenarios were pretty much standalone. In the base box, they sort of had a loose connecting storyline that you could read into, but it didn't go any further than that. This one has actual built-in gameplay mechanics so that you can play through each one of these villains, and certain things will carry over from one scenario to the next. So let's start with the new stuff that's included. The heroes, as I said, Hawkeye and Spider-Woman, both fully formed starter decks included in there. You will need all the rest of the tokens and components from the original game. It's not a standalone, but just like with the standalone hero packs, these do come with a fully playable deck, which is nice. Hawkeye was my favorite of these two. His gimmick is that he, of course, shoots arrows, so he has several arrow cards, and in order to shoot them, he needs his bow card on the field. And the bow is really great. It automatically just gives him +1 attack, and it makes all of his arrows ranged, which means they can ignore retaliate effects from villains. And you also can get a couple of cards that will let you use those cards as resources specifically for arrows. They'll go on the field in front of you, so if you have those out, you don't have to spend cards from your hand. Plus, you can get Hawkeye's Quiver, which lets you look at the top 5 cards of your deck, find an arrow, and then place it in that quiver, so you can keep it there for later use, and again, it doesn't have to take up space in your hand. So if you can get at least a couple of those things in play, he has some really fun combos where you can have a bunch of arrows going, you have the resources on the field. Then the idea with his starter deck is he has allies in there, so that's what you would be using the rest of your hand and your cards in your hand for, to use those allies to defend him, I think, mostly because his defense isn't the best. He only has 9 health points, but his arrows are really, really fun to use. They have a lot of different effects, mostly for attack, but some of them can hit minions. A lot of them will stun or confuse the enemies that they're taking on. So I really, really enjoyed playing as him. Spider-Woman, she has an interesting thing going on with her, which is that she is the first hero you can build that has 2 aspects in her deck. So most heroes, if you're not familiar with the game, can only have 1 aspect type, basically 1 color of card types into their deck. She gets 2, and on top of that, some of her personal hero cards have their own aspects as well. And the reason why that's so important is because Spider-Woman increases her stats for each different aspect you play during her turn. So if you play 1 aggression and 1 justice, that's 2 different aspects. She gets a +2 to her attack, her defense, and her thwart power. So while they all start at just a base of 1, she can quickly ramp up if you get the right things that you need. She has some things that will help her out with that, like you can go to Jessica Drew's apartment, which lets you look at the top 5 cards of your deck and look for an aspect specifically that you want. And I think the best way to play her, ideally, is you'd get a lot of cheaper aspects so that you can play multiple of them in a turn. For the most part, you're probably not going to be playing more than 2, maybe 3. But if you get lucky and you combo into the right thing, you might be able to play 3 or 4 even rarely, and really have her become a powerhouse for those turns, along with some cards she has to allow her to refresh herself or unexhaust, whatever they call it in this game, ready, that's what it is, so that she can use that power for that turn multiple times. She has some cool new cards in there in addition to her personal cards like Spider-Man. So, of course, Spider-Man was already a playable hero. Now he's also an ally in her deck. He's really, really strong. He costs 5, but as soon as you put him into play, he takes 3 threat off of a scheme. He's a really nice asset to have, I think. I didn't find her deck as compelling for me personally. She's pretty good at dealing with threat and thwarting, not as strong on attacking. And I like that. I like the idea of having the 2 aspects. And I think that if you're more into the deck building side of the game, you'll be able to really go in depth with her and come up with some interesting combinations because of the nature of her deck and the effects that those aspect cards have on her abilities. But personally, I found Hawkeye felt a little more. I locked into exactly what his strategy should have been earlier and enjoyed his play more. But I think both are solid heroes. And then on to the villains. You got Crossbones, who has weapons, special weapons that he can use, which are interesting and cool, but I thought he was sort of the most basic of the villains in this one. But it quickly ramps up from there. Then you move on to Taskmaster. Actually, no, then you move on to Absorbing Man. You can play him in any order you want, but going by the campaign. Absorbing Man is really interesting because he felt like fighting off with with Mega Man, because every time he has a different environment card in play, he has a different form. So he's either absorbing the properties of wood or metal, for example. And certain cards of his will say, if he's in wood form right now, this thing happens that's worse. So you're trying to work around that and hopefully stop him from being in the forms you don't want him to be in because they make him stronger. But I thought that was really cool. He has some nice variability because every time you play him, he might have a different property, so you're going to see different effects. Taskmaster is really, really annoying because he punishes you for being in hero form or for flipping to hero form. He will target you and do more damage to you for both of those things. So you have to decide, if you're in hero form, it might be better just to stay in it because flipping back and forth will hurt you. But also staying in hero form will make things worse the longer that you do that. So that's a really interesting, tricky challenge to navigate because most of the characters in the game excel in their hero forms. So that's definitely going to add some challenge and force you to come up with some new strategies. Then things get really, really difficult. I think 2 of the hardest villains that they've added to the game. I know, I mean, I'm not the best at Marvel Champions. I know some people consider the game very easy, and I wouldn't say it's the hardest game ever made, especially if you're playing co-op and you've built out your own decks personally. But I think these guys really up the ante. You've got, again, Zola, first of all, and what he does is he puts a whole bunch of minions on the field that are constantly going to be engaged with you, and a lot of them have toughness, so they're harder to get through. And he also has a lot of different weapon and upgrade attachments that are going to be going on to those minions. So what might not seem like such a bad minion at first can quickly become tough and with extra health and extra attack points and all this stuff. So you really have to keep an eye on that and try to get rid of those things as fast as possible before they ramp up. Then Red Skull, appropriately, he's the big bad boss of this set. I mean, he's in the title of the thing. He's also very tough because he has his own deck of side schemes. All his side schemes go in a separate deck from the main encounter deck. And every turn, a new one of those side schemes is coming out. And while some of them have positive effects if you're able to clear them, they might let you get rid of an enemy from the field, a minion. So that's kind of nice. There are still all those side schemes in play. For each one that's out, he's going to get an extra attack point. And they will add things like, the acceleration effects, making you draw more encounter cards, etc. So you really want to be able to deal with side schemes and threat and things like that. Fortunately, Spider-Woman is a good inclusion in this one. There are certain other heroes who really thrive when there are all those side schemes. They can do different things that help them clear and give them rewards when they do clear side schemes. So that's a nice added bonus. But yeah, I found Red Skull very tough in addition to Zola. Three I liked in general, but there are some that have more interesting effects than others. But then the biggest thing, again, that I haven't really gone into is that campaign mode. And the way that works is you play through with the same set of heroes each time. You are allowed to manipulate the decks if you would like in between sessions. But for the most part, you want to use the same exact hero groups, and they will be gaining their own special cards or new upgrades as the game goes on. So if you win, you don't even get to. If you lose, you just play it again. You don't have any negative effects. But if you win, you will get certain benefits. You'll get maybe an upgrade to your health permanently, or you will have an upgrade to your defense, or maybe eventually you can change that so that you have a new ability that rewards you every time you defeat a minion or every time you clear a side scheme. And then you also might be losing things along the way. There was a scheme, I think it's Taskmaster, who captures allies. He captures your allies. And if you're unable to get those allies back before the game is over, then they're gone for the rest of the campaign. On the other hand, you might gain new allies. One of them has their own special allies that are, Moon Knights in there and Shang-Chi, and you can now add those to your deck for the duration of the campaign. You can also play an expert mode, and in expert mode, you actually have to keep track of your health points from session to session. So you can't just skirt by anymore like I usually do. Like, yeah, I have 2 health left, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to be able to take them out. Now it matters that you have 2 health left because you're going to have to start the next session with that 2 health. So this is a great option if you are a more advanced player and you're really looking for a challenge, or you just like to, feel a sense of progression, feel like you're going through a story. There is a story included. They have some little comic book pages that illustrate it. It's I wouldn't say it's in the caliber of most Marvel comics these days. It reads more like the Marvel comic you would get in a cereal box or in the back of a coloring book or something like that. It's very, very basic, generic kind of an Avengers team-up story versus Red Skull and all his minions. That's not really going to compel you too much, I don't think. The campaign I like. It will vary for you exactly how often you decide to come back to it. I think it's a cool thing to switch things up, and there are some neat new ideas in there. It doesn't go as in depth as something like the Arkham Horror card game, which is designed all around campaign play, but as a little something to make it feel like, there's some more meat in here and you can have a more extended session that feels like your choices have an impact and matter for a longer period of time. It's cool that they did it. Not something that I personally would be super excited to do multiple times, but maybe with different groups and trying it with different heroes and seeing what different results you can get. There's some things you can explore there. Overall, as a final product, here at Roll for Crit, we like to recommend expansions with either a pass, try it, or buy it. And for the value that you're getting in this thing, if you like Marvel Champions at this stage of the game, not knowing what future expansions will bring, this is a no-brainer buy it to me. Even if you have no interest in that campaign mode at all, this comes with 2 new heroes that are both pretty solid. But to me, the real value in this one is 5 new villains, all of which come with their own very unique scenarios and side schemes, plus a couple of other separate encounter decks that you will be mixing and matching with various villains. And some of those later ones, especially as I laid out, I think have very cool, unique skill sets that will require you to work differently and think differently. So that's the part that excites me, and that adds a ton of replay value to the game. The villains, I think, are where you get most of the replay value in Marvel Champions. The heroes are great, but having the different scenarios to play against, and there's some heavy hitters in there. I mean, Red Skull is obviously the big one in terms of name recognition, but Taskmaster is coming up these days. Arnim Zola is, he makes a name for himself out there. I don't know how many people care about Crossbones or Absorbing Man, but they have to fill it out somehow. They're not going to give you all the juicy ones just in one set. So I really had a good time with The Rise of Red Skull. Again, for me, Hawkeye was the one that I really keyed into. I think, for some people, I've heard people say the exact opposite, that they thought his deck needed a little bit more tweaking. But I would be curious to hear your thoughts if you're watching this video. Which aspects do you think go best with which hero? Do you like Hawkeye as leadership that he comes with? Do you think he works better with something else? Aggression, maybe? And for Spider-Woman, she can have two aspects. Which two do you pick? Boy, the world is your oyster over there. Overall, again, Rise of Red Skull, how can I not recommend it? If you are a Marvel Champions fan, or even if you just picked up the base set, outside of, maybe if you want to pick up some of your favorite heroes that exist separately, this is a great follow-up buy to just get this, and it will, nearly double the amount of replay value that you have at your disposal from the base game. It is available right now, and there's more on the horizon. Talk to me in the comments down below if you want to let me know your thoughts. Otherwise, that was Marvel Champions: The Rise of Red Skull, the expansion review. My name is Jonathan, and this was Roll for Crit.
If you want to help out, you can check out our Patreon, or a simple click to like and subscribe can go a long way.
We really appreciate everything that you can do for us. We love you.